Hey everybody, it's Bust with Battles with Bust number 421, and today we're doing battle with Teemo Tristana. And so, Teemo Tristana, this is a deck to where the old Yordle gets some new tricks, if you will. It seems to find something new and interesting for the deck every set that comes out these days. And so the kind of initial version of the big Tristana decks was playing Shadow Isles for Atrocity. And so if you managed to get your Tristana up to 10 or 12 attack or whatever, if you couldn't deal the combat damage to finish off the game, you could just send her to the face with Atrocity. That eventually led to the nerf to Atrocity and then its exile into the Eternal format. But here more recently, there was an update to Bandle Gunners that spawned off another flurry of Tristana decks, if you will. You would see Tristana with Noxus, so you could do a similar game plan with Might. You would get Tristana up to 10 attack or so, slap the Might on her, and get in a bunch of overwhelm damage. You would have the Bilgewater version, which was making use of prize fights, and so you could take your opponent's units down to 1 health, kill them off with pie tosses and group shots and the like, and then just swarm through them with the remainder of your units. That was very popular and powerful. And then the last deck out of the most recent meta that was looking to take advantage of Tristana was the Demacia version using Champion Strength. This is a deck that is more than capable of getting 6 units on the board, and then Champion Strength almost assuredly ends the game if you're able to resolve it with a big board. And so, Tristana most certainly at the top of the meta. The nerf to Bandle Gunners and the nerf to Tristana did knock it down a peg. You haven't seen too much of Tristana recently, but we're wanting to see if the new cards here in the Scrutinizing Sergeant are going to be what can take this deck back up to that top tier. And so, if you've watched our most recent videos here, we played Scouts in Battles with Bust number 420. We've really been investigating the use of both Champion Strength and Silence and Suppress in this current meta. There's just so much of the Siren Songs deck running around that the silences are incredibly powerful. But as you play against the Siren Song deck, they tend to take forever to really get their deck up and running. It may be turn 4 or turn 5 until they start having a lot of legitimate threats on the board, and they give you ample time to get 6 units on the board and follow up with the Champion Strength. And so we're looking to kind of continue that strategy on as we move over here into Bandle City, but the big upgrade, the big addition that we get nowadays is going to be adding in the Scrutinizing Sergeant. There are a lot of fantastically powerful cards that we can target with the Sergeant coming out of this deck. The deck's namesake in Tristana is a unit that we can just summon out, be like, LOL, here's a Scrutinizing Sergeant plus a 10 power unit. Very powerful things there, but we also have access to the Vanguard Sergeant to generate the 4 Demacias and the Wandering Shepherd to come into play and generate a unit. And so lots of very high-powered targets for the Scrutinizing Sergeant, and he feels like a very ample replacement in the space of Bandle Gunners, especially in the sense that we're trying to chase down this go wide theme, as opposed to kind of picking off some of the opposing units with the likes of prize fights and such. And so the Scrutinizing Sergeant should be the new hot dog, the new tautness coming out of this style of deck. Otherwise, it should be very familiar in terms of the older Tristana-based decks. We have a lot of multi-faction early game plays with the Bandle Commando, the Grandfather Fae, and the Grumble Slug. 2 of the 3, the Commando and the Grandfather Fae, also generate the Hungry Owlcats, which can be quite powerful in this format. Getting both 2 units and a spell shielded unit off of these cards. And then down here with the equipment, quite a big fan of the equipment in this format, since the kind of standard answer to playing with or I should say playing against the Siren Song decks is to just go for silences, right? So if your opponent has a Siren Song into 2 Husks, and then they put a Divine Clerk on that and make it like an 8/8 or whatever that amounts to, if you're able to just silence away all of those stats, you're in a pretty good spot. But you can't silence away stats from equipment, and so getting these extra bonuses from the Wandering Shepherd and the Combat Cook give us another additional edge in this kind of format. And so I will say, I'm still giving this deck a bit of a test. I plan to run this in the upcoming Runeterra Open here a day away from once this video was released. And so I'm not entirely sold on all of these numbers. I do feel like I want a little bit more interactivity in terms of removal. I'm not super happy with just the 2 pie tosses and 2 silence and suppresses. So as the Runeterra Open gets here, you may see us edit this just a little bit, but the kind of core idea and strategy is all here. And I'm quite happy with a lot of what this deck can do. And so that's it. That's the deck we're doing battle with today. Let's go ahead, jump on into that queue, see if we can't get a good game or two along the way. Good old Tristana. I touched on this idea before with the Scrutinizing Sergeant. I put together a Scrutinizing Sergeant deck with both Bane and Misfortune, both being very high-powered units that you can search out of the deck. With the Scrutinizing Sergeant, I wasn't ultimately super happy with it at the end of the day. I think it's just much more important in this format to be able to go wide onto your opponent, but it's nice to have it kind of cycle back with the addition of Tristana's, and then I've been very happy with it in terms of the Vanguard Sergeants, just giving us tons of stats here at the end of the day. But all right, jumping into battles up against Teemo Sejuani. This is typically a plunder-based deck to where you're trying to use the puff caps to hit the plunders on the odd turns, right? So typically you're just getting to hit your plunders, your damages to level up Sejuani on your attack tokens, but if you can pop a puff cap on the opponent on their turn, it gives you that kind of free way to level up your Sejuani and level up some of your plunder cards. And so it's very important to get that initial Teemo off the board. If you're not familiar with playing a deck like Gangplank Sejuani, you typically want to devote excessive amounts of resources to keep their champions from flipping, because that's where all of the power in the deck comes from. And so we'll put a little bit of effort into taking this Sejuani down from leveling up. She is a fairly hard counter to our champion's strength if she is able to flip, and so we're going to be a little bit mindful of our opponent's ways to level that champion up. Now, we might have just gotten a rage quit right at the start. Opponent puts their Teemo on the board, and we have the pie toss to take him down. And so, if that's the way the day's got to be, then I guess that's how it's going to go. But you usually don't get the phone to the toilet rage quit first play of the game, but maybe Teemo Sejuani player here just wasn't feeling it after that.
Think they can see me?
Seems like they're gone. Fastest rage quit 2023, am I right? LOL.
Armed and ready.
All right, well, I guess we'll just have to do some attacking. Hopefully, finish this game off here in a couple of actions. But no, this gives us a chance as we play the pie toss. I'm very interested in the removal in this format, given that typically throughout the history of card gaming, removal is top tier. It's one of the most important things that you're going to have included in any of your decks. But in this current format, it's just not that good, right? If your opponent plays a Siren Song and all of their units are getting +1/+1, and then they play a Reaver's Row that's going to grow all of those units and put 2 units on the board. If you're out here spending 3 and 4 mana to kill off your opponent's 1-drops, you're just going to fall super far behind every game. And so, right, you don't want to be spending 2 mana to kill off your opponent's 1-drop and then spending 3 mana to kill off the next one. It's just too expensive to do all of that. But that's where the things like Silence and Suppress come in. If we just get to weaken that unit quite a bit and call it a day, that's a place to where having a Silence may actually be a little bit better than physically having a removal spell. And so it's kind of tough. Like a deck like this might typically play like 3 Buster Shots and 2 or 3 of the 1-cost pings, or if you're playing the prize fight version, you would play the full 6 1-damage pings. But I'm just not real big on removal in this format. It's just like the high impact units to kill don't cost a lot of mana. You're never finding that spot to where your opponent plays their 6-drop and then you kill it with a Disintegrate, right? And so been kind of interesting. It feels weird just having the 2 pie tosses, but I feel like we want just a little bit more. I'm not entirely certain what the answer is there, but a little bit more feels like what we want.
Looking splendid, sir.
All right, well, let's keep slapping these units on the board. I don't know how much longer we're going to have to sit in this game, but should be over in short order.
Shoot you again.
It's interesting, like a lot of the Tristana Teemo decks of days of old would play 2 Teemos and 1 Gnar. since drawing the second Teemo and having it turn into a mushroom cloud is a pretty bad deal. And so it's like I kind of think in my head, what if we just kind of cut this down to 2 Teemos to fit in more removal spells? But if like one of the most dangerous units in the format is Fizz, it is kind of nice to have the Teemo that can come down and interact with Fizz, even if it's going to be a losing combat. If you get to stop your opponent from, you know, lethaling you with an 8 damage Fizz attack, that's better than just losing the game. And so he gets quite a bit of value, even if he's not, you know, directly getting those trades. And then with kind of the rise of the Sump Monument deck we've seen over the past few days, it's a little interesting having access to the Teemos and having access to the pie tosses to take those 1 damage units off the board. Alright, but this game will end eventually, you know. I don't think opponent's just sitting over there roping. I think that it's done. It just hasn't canceled the game yet. But you can get a Scrutinizing Sergeant on board, you know, see what that looks like, see what that feels like. Put the tip in, see if it feels good and stuff. Under normal circumstances, he's probably realistically not even the best play here. We'd probably want to bank up this mana to ensure we get a champion strength on this next turn. But we're getting there, I guess. Things are moving along. So many good targets with the Scrutinizing Sergeant, though. It's such a good deal to play the Scrutinizing Sergeant and the Vanguard Sergeant and then getting the 4 Demacia and having 6 units on board. It's just a very strong on-curve play, right? The 5 into the 6. I'm still like pretty big on the Scrutinizing Sergeant. When I was doing my initial review of the set, the card it reminded me of is in Magic. There's a card called Collected Company, which I don't remember exactly what it does. It kind of lets you do some burst speed shenanigans in terms of looking at the top 6 cards of your deck and putting 2 units on the board. But it's been kind of format staple in anything that it was allowed to be in. And it felt like a very direct comparison to something like Scrutinizing Sergeant, as to where it's doing a very similar thing, getting just this reasonably bodied bro on the board, but then also doing kind of a mini tutor onto the top units of your deck. It's interesting stuff. Alright, they'll never know what hit him. 33 damage coming in. Maybe this one's finally done. Opponent was hoping to have a good day, you know. You're at work. You take your manager, you say, "Manager, I'm taking my 15. I got to go take a dump." You don't got to take a dump, but you're going and just sitting on the toilet playing a little LOR. Queue up against old Bust. He kills your Teemo on turn 1. You just kind of rage drop the phone right into the toilet. It sucks, man. It sucks. But sometimes dims to breaks. Alright, the battle has ended. Very easy if your opponent only plays 1 card. And so that's all you need for today. That's all you need to know about the deck. Battles with Bust are complete. See you tomorrow. Just kidding. Just kidding. You got about another 45 minutes of me here. So what do we got now? Old Viego in Soul Fighter form? I haven't actually seen the Viego yet. I was a little disappointed yesterday. I was you could probably just take a full mulligan here. I don't think a lot of targets for Pytos. I was playing a bit of Evelynn Demacia. I was playing a bit of Evelynn Lucian, and I was so disappointed that I hadn't made my way through the reward path enough to get the to get the Evelynn skin. And then by the time I got the Evelynn skin, I just didn't want to play the deck anymore. And so we'll have to circle back around to that deck some point just to get the Evelynn skin out in the sunlight. But it was a bit of a letdown. But once the Runeterra's opens past, there's not too much excitement in terms of competitive play for the next couple of weeks, and so we'll have some time to circle back to the more casual offerings, if you will. All right, pretty reasonable stuff here. We can pick up either the Tenor of Terror or the Poro Sled, add that in next turn. I'm kind of leaning towards the Poro Sled. Opponent is going to have Vengeance mana next round, is what gives me a little bit of pause with this. And so what's going to happen is we have the 2 mana banked up for the form up. That's kind of nice. We can play Teemo this turn for free. But next turn, you know, if we're just going to play Poro Sled into Vengeance, I would rather have the Tenor of Terror. But I guess at the end of the day, if opponent spends their full 6 mana next turn on Vengeancing the Poro Sled, that's not terrible. You know, it's a huge tempo hit for them. They can't add any more units to the board that turn because they've spent all their mana. And I think at the end of the day, it just sounds like a win. Very interested in this. Surprised to see him attack with the dude. It's like there had to be some kind of shenanigan. I'm not surprised to have that come in. And man, we just should not have done that, right? We just got smoked for so much mana. I thought that we were going to be able to get out of that with a form up, and I was 100% wrong. That was just 2 damage we should have taken.
Together we are united.
Learned my lesson. Better to learn our lesson now than as we get into the open, you know. It's not a combo you typically see. You don't typically have a very defensive control-y style unit like that Sentry, and then opponent's like, LOL, it's Elixir of Iron. the absolute most aggressive combat trick in the game. Kind of odd. But here, we'll take the counter spell with form up. That feels pretty good. We can still get our Teemo on the board. If he manages to have a 3rd Sentry, we can take it down with the Pie Toss before we get our attack in. Feels like a pretty reasonable round.
Victory requires a sharp
Oh yeah,
blade.
we're gonna boom you. We're not gonna let that Glory Seeker just hang out.
Adventure starts with mushrooms.
So it is kind of interesting with this next turn. If we want to either add in the Scrutinizing Sergeant, maybe dig for a Tristana, or if we want to just add in the Poro Sled on the discount. I'm leaning towards the Sled at this point, but we'll have to see what opponent does. Just it's bigger than this stuff, right? You can get into combat with a Kamaver Soldier and not feel too bad about it. Ooh, interesting. It's like if he attacks with the Soldier, I'll gladly block with the Grumble Slug and try and pastry toss him down next turn. Right, we're gonna very easily have a full board with the Poro Sleds putting the stats down. Sure. Rip Teemo. He was not a particularly important unit at this stage. So yeah, I think we want to lead with the Sled. Ideally, we'll get that discount on the mana before we add the unit to the board. Yeah, we're definitely not strong enough to take down Viego now. But still get a pretty healthy chunk of damage in. And we can pretty easily refill next turn as well. So yeah, I suspected he would be blocking the Poro Sled, and then next turn he'll probably hook in the Vandal City Mayor, and then that leaves the Viego around to block the other Sled next turn. But we'll see what they think about it. The Hydra Vine. So we just have to get a full board here. I'd like to get a 3-power unit down. Right, if he's gonna hook something with Viego. I guess it doesn't really matter if Viego is gonna take a hook. It's like either Viego hooks the Poro Sled or we get to just block with it. I don't want to add the Scrutinizing Sergeant just yet. Just in case opponent has a or like I want to play the Sergeant and then get Tristana. I wonder if we should have just passed here. Now we're kind of messed up in terms of our mana. What do we got? Scrutinizing Sergeant into Tristana. Vandal Gunner on the ready.
Blasting off!
Would have been a lot cooler if she had additional attack, but kind of is what it is, I guess. So we'll be getting a Hydrovine. It's gonna be close. Let's see if he's gonna have a removal here or not. He has blocks onto 2, so if he blocks our 2 bigs, that still gets 2 impact in. Looking to give it one of these. I mean, this should be lethal. I don't know. It's a tough spot. We maybe should have just got more stats onto the Tristana. We could have spewed a bunch of units onto the board here. So I'm just curious how we land in a spot to where we lose the game. You know, it's like if we start adding cards and he gets to fill out his board, can we still win the game from there? Probably not. Seems like he doesn't have a Vengeance, though. He keeps swapping around these blocks that don't matter, and so... Typically, if you're going to have a removal spell, you'd be looking to put your Hydrovine, like, say, in front of the Scrutinizing Sergeant and then Vengeancing down the Tristana. So we might be okay here. Maybe.
Hurry up so I can shoot you again.
Hurry up so I can shoot you again. Looks like it was enough. Good job, Tristana. I appreciate the things you do.
Hooray
Good
for
stuff.
The Vandal Gunners.
All right, 2 victories. We're definitely counting that first game. Just squeaking out the second one, even after our monstrous misplay. Feels good. Feels good, man. I've learned my lesson. I'll respect the ceaseless sentry from now on. Alright, now on to Kai'sa Evelynn. What do we got here? We can start off with the Teemo. This isn't a matchup to where I really think we want Pytos, but it's interesting. There's some pretty decent targets coming out of the Shurima suite to where Pytos can do some cleanup in the early game. Maybe it's worth hanging on to here. Like, there's just so many. There's like the Evolve unit, the Fearsome unit. They might play the Predict unit. There's a lot of targets for it. So it's not a very expensive thing to be throwing down early, and so. The other one turns up.
Another day in the field.
I hope you're hungry, bro. Hungry for some pie. Like you put bananas on it. It looks fucking nasty. Is that what those are? Some kind of banana pie? Ugh. Who plays with these Bandle City cards? Some expert out there that plays Bandle City should be able to tell us. I don't know, man. One of the finer things to move into the big city, where I grew up in Huntington, West Virginia, there may have been a bakery. There was like maybe one, but it was your kind of all-purpose bakery, right? They didn't have a ton of specialty stuff. Typically, if you have like a bakery in a small town, you specialize in like weddings, right? That's the people who are gonna drop a bunch of cheddar on a cake, you know. But now that I'm out here in Kansas City, there's specialty stores. There's a specialty pie place out there. Fucking fantastic. Nothing wrong with just getting some pies, and I love it. That's what we do. You have to, like, pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving is the kind of go-to treat, the go-to snack. You have to pre-order it like 6 weeks in advance, and then even with that like gigantic pre-order situation, they still like limit you to 2, and you have to get like a ticket, an arrival time to show up when. So there's not just like a line halfway around the block of people waiting on their pies. So worth it though. So worth it. The beauty of the big city. The biggest city of them all. Kansas City. Speaking of Kansas City, I know that the Patrick Mahomes has a feature on Netflix now. The Netflix made their foray into the lands of football-related reality television, and they did something following Patrick Mahomes around for a while, and that means it's probably just the best show on television right now. So I haven't had the chance to check it out. We started watching the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary on the Netflix, and it's been pretty good. Arnold's a very interesting character. And a quicksand. Okay. I mean, I think it's fine. Again, we're not like super invested in this Teemo. We're not a legitimate Teemo deck out here. Just he's a good unit in the deck, and so that's completely fine to have him come down and die to a steam. Gonna go ahead and level up the Bandle Commando. He shouldn't have access to any more units here, but in the event that he does, we want to be able to have our premier unit survive. And now we just need to get into get into our turn 7. And so I'm not going to get too aggressive on this board anymore. We'll add in the Bandle Commando, kind of see how he reacts here. I don't want to like drop Tristana and then have Tristana die to a steam attack. So we'll look to add her in next turn. We should still be able to add the Wandering Shepherd here, though. Let's just go with the Pot of Pain. Could potentially get our Grumble Slug big enough to survive these hits from Steam. So let's see who comes in. Lots of potential for scaries. I was going to say, if Kai'sa comes in, we're going to be hurting because we don't have the answer to Steam. We didn't pick up our silence this game. So she's going to be flipped, right? Oh, no, she's not. So we'll take a ton of damage, but she's not incredibly scary. Right, she's going to be getting Scout. She'll hit for 12 or so.
I'm not afraid of change.
You're all welcome.
I'm stronger than the dark.
And he doesn't attack with Steam. Interesting. Okay. I'll take it. I wonder what happens. I mean, we just keep passing, right? Is he really gonna send the round back? I was gonna say, I can't imagine that they do. Let's see. Vandal City Mayor comes in. Just want the cheapest one, right? Well, not necessarily the cheapest one. We're not going to be able to add it in this round. Let's pick up Tenor of Terror. We might find ourselves in a spot a couple of turns from now to where
Looking splendid, sir.
the Tenor is able to get some blocks in. Now this was kind of scary. The way that we sequenced this to where we get the bonus stats onto the bird did put our Tristana at risk to a hate spike, and I think if we could have taken it back, I probably would have rather just had one less stat point here and then let our Tristana be safe, right? She's going to be the key unit as this attack rolls in, and I wouldn't have been too happy should she have fell to a hate spike. Fuck. Alright. Well, he had that. I don't think we can win from this point. Okay, GG. It does lead me towards the strategy. Like, I'm looking to take this deck into the Runeterra Open. Like, I'm going to take the Triple Champion Strength deck. We'll talk about it more in the video itself, but the idea is we'll probably just ban obnoxious control deck if it exists. And so if you're like, ooh, I'm going to come out here and play Nasus Senna, like a deck that has like 4 good matchups and then just gets annihilated by everything else in the field, then we'll come in and ban that just because we have to. But if we look to after that, we're just going to ban the deck that has the denies in it. And so most likely that would be the Gnar or the Gen deck. So Gen Nora, Gnar, whichever flavor people are running, because it does tend to play the stay-in disciple, a stashy disciple, whatever the thing is called, the transform card that has the Rite of Negation built into it. That's probably the ban we'll most commonly be taking, and then if that doesn't exist, we'll probably just ban Karma Set. But that's the kind of idea and spot we're in, rolling into the event, I think. All right, opponent has their Siren Song. Nothing we can do about that. But we can start to just completely fill out this board, and we have both the Scrutinizing Sergeant and the Vanguard Sergeant. And so on our next attack, we're most certainly going to have a 4 Demacia to drop on the board. Leaning towards just the Tenor of Terror, get the most units down. We can still get a ton of width next turn. I don't think we'll play the Tenor. I think what I'm looking towards here is we'll play the Bandle City Mayor, and then we'll get to play the Wandering Shepherd for 1 mana, flood in as much as we can, and then 2 turns from now, we'll look to add the Vanguard Sergeant and then the 2 mana Tenor of Terror. And then ideally after that, we'll be able to play 4 Demacia. So the only thing opponents should have to really kind of get in the way of this nonsense would be a Hate Spike. They don't seem to be presenting it at the moment. So here, I think we have enough board fill. Let's just take the Poro Sled as the biggest unit. Now we're going to look to Wandering Shepherd the Slug. Steam comes in. He's all over the place today.
You did 1 Yordle portal and suddenly geography means nothing.
So we are going to lose out on a Bandle City Mayor next turn. So we'll see how this plays out. Ideally, we'll get to play this Tenor of Terror before he comes in and hooks in the Bandle City Mayor, which, you know, it's not 100% likely that he's going to open attack. He just gets completely annihilated. Oh, shit. Wow. I was going to say, he gets completely annihilated by Form Up. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see him no attack, or not necessarily hook in the Bandle City Mayor, but definitely surprised to see him not go for damage.
And all the time in the world.
Everything a girl could die for.
Okay.
Mind if I slip into something a little more painful?
So he's attacking. We can safely just pass at this point. Even if something went completely wrong there to where he didn't actually pass, we could have still next turn had 9 mana to both Vanguard Sergeant and 4 Demacia. So I think it would have been okay either way. Interesting. Why would he be giving up on the Youngling here? Oh, more than happily block it with our 4-2. There's no 1 mana combat tricks they could have out here.
Discipline and steel.
All right, Vanguard Sergeant ready to go.
Scream for me. Let's keep going.
All right, 4 Demacia time. So we're not going to get the lethal this turn, right? He can add a unit. He'll have 4 units on the board. He could even have one of the Divine Clerk style units, which would be pretty annoying in this space. But ideally, we're going to do the heavy lifting this turn to where we kill off most of his team, and it's going to take him too much to kind of refill. Ideally, hopefully, maybe.
Ready for a little splish splash steam?
Always, Eve.
Ready for a little splish splash steam? That's a pretty good husk, though. He hit the tough husk, which is something you're definitely looking for on this defensive turn. If it was literally anything else, could have probably taken down the Evelynn, but
Die.
I think we're still get what we want this
Time
turn.
to die.
Breathe it in.
Are you gonna fall to 1? That's pretty ballsy.
You're mine.
That's pretty ballsy.
Close your eyes. You're all mine.
All right, and the elusive steam goes away. Very good. Still got 2 units on board. We can block these forever. That's not a big deal. We can look to finish off on our next attack.
That's it.
Tristana turns up.
Hello, love. Who's your plaything today?
Another leader desperate to lose
All right, well,
control.
I think we gotta... Oh god, he hit the elusive. Okay, well at least he's only got 4 mana left at this point. So we're just gonna pass until he gets all his attacks in. And then we'll refill out the board and try and win with impacts. Sure. Oh no, is he gonna have the Divine Clerk?
Don't waste my time.
Oh no. Oh no.
I love it when they
Okay,
scream.
well he's attacked at this point. I gotta feel much safer. Didn't take a scout attack either. Could have scout attacked one of our smaller units into the tough steam.
I protect my own.
Interesting.
That was hot.
Impress me.
So how deep do we go with this? It's like I'm tempted to play the Scrutinizing Sergeant and then see if we hit a Tristana, but we need to play this Tristana first if we're going to do that. The other thing to kind of consider is next turn, if we have 11 mana, we can Scrutinizing Sergeant and 4 Demacia should we hit that one either. And so I think this is where we want to go. We want to add the Tristana. Then we're going to add in this 1-cost unit. We'll take a 3 bank into the next turn, and then we'll Scrutinizing Sergeant and see what we hit. Is that better than just getting impacts everywhere?
Scream for me.
Well,
Waste my
the
time.
thing that we can kind of do with this is even if we miss on the Scrutinizing Sergeant, we can still just play other units. Right, so we hit Tristana here. So now we can be like, well, I'm just going to add Grandfather Fae and a Grumble Slug, so we have the 2 Tristanas on board. Uh-oh, something coming in. This is going to be scary, isn't it? Sunburst. Okay. He's only going to have 3 units on board for the turn, and one of his units is going to have to block Tristana. I think we're in good shape. As standard, I've done no mathematics, and so he wants to sit around and do math. But no, we've got like 5 impact on the board. I think we're good. Let's get him, squad. So right, he has to block Tristana. Then if he blocks our 2 4s, he's taking 8 damage plus whatever the impact is. It's pretty good. Fuck, we got a cat going on about something. She's getting upset that I refuse to do any mathematics. She's hanging out up here. I know it's hard to see, but my ultimate goal, this is probably a big life goal, is we're gonna start remodeling an empty space in our house. Like all of these houses out here in the Midwest have basements, and so the popular thing to do is to just remodel the basement or finish the basement so you have more space down there. And we're gonna wall off a little section of the basement so that I can have that space, and then we can use this room for something else. And once that's intact, I think we can turn the blurs off and let the cats just hang out and stuff. And so I think that's the ultimate goal for many people, not only in the lands of making videos, but in the lands of life and stuff. We'll see. So interesting start. Playing against Illaoi Swain is one of these decks that we kind of incidentally get a lot of value out of cards like Silence and Suppress, being able to weaken the Tentacle at an opportune moment. And so if he has one of these rounds to where, he's got a 7/7 Tentacle on the board, and we can wipe away a lot of those stats, it can do a lot in terms of just taking that unit down off of the board. But we'll wait on this one. I put the Pytos fourth and then pulled it back. I kind of envisioned that with a hand like we have here, that we'll probably play Silence and Suppress on the Tentacle at some point, and then hit it with the Pytos. And so just wait a little bit before we go in with that. We'll hit with the Owl. I'm not quite ready to lose the Bandle City Mayor. I'm not super keen on the removal suite that these decks play as to whether or not this would be a deck playing Disintegrate, but I think that's okay in this spot. Our little Owl isn't doing too much. I don't want to lose the Bandle City Mayor, though. He's a little bit too important in this space. Alright, he's got a fresh one. Might be taking some damage from it. I'm looking to get the Bandle Commando down and then play the Wandering Shepherd onto the Commando so we have this nice elusive attacker next turn. And then we're going to move into the Scrutinizing Sergeant. I don't particularly care if we just take 2 points of damage here. Now this is an interesting spot. He shouldn't have the means to block. I'd kind of like picking up the additional health. But, I mean, the damage coming from this deck, if it's going to be heavy metal, it's just going to kill our unit anyways. So we'll pick up the Fishawak so that we can have it on standby if Tristana ever turns up. Alright, the damage is in. Who do we hit with Scrutinizing Sergeant? Not a very strong set of units. Now, the thing to note with this, if we hit the Bandle City Mayor, we don't get the play ability, right? This thing summons the unit. Where's the minus at? So see, summon it and place the rest in your deck. So we don't get the bonus unit from the Mayor. We do get the bonus unit from the Grandfather Fae or the Wandering Shepherd. I think we just want to go with the Shepherd. We do have this Bandle Commando on board generating Owl's Forest, and so there is some argument to pick up the Shepherd since it's going to, or to pick up the Mayor, what do you call it? The Grandfather Fae, so that we can get that free unit and then keep flooding out the board. But very interested why opponent's not doing anything here. Is he just like wanting to add Swain but afraid something's going to happen to him? Very weird that he's just passing with this 5 mana. Maybe it's the same thing. If he's not wanting to block with the Tentacle, maybe it's the same thing but an Illaoi. Right? Illaoi doesn't actually block and kill anything that we have on the board. Okay. Interesting. Somebody just say I farted. I swear I'm an old man, but nothing funnier than a fart. All right, though. Nice draw with Tristana, so we can go Tristana into the slug, into the Fishawhack onto her. See if opponent has a way to try and slow this down and stop it. She's not, you know, unkillable at this point. It's very easy to have a disintegrate style play, but she's definitely the unit we want now. And I mean, we might find ourselves, it's kind of an interesting silence and suppress on the Watchful Idol. It does prevent him from getting tentacles, but then he can block with the Watchful Idol at that point, right? You silence off the immobilize, and so it's not as awesome as I would like it to be. Alright, rip Teemo. I think we'll just take the tentacle off of the board. Interesting how this looks, though. Like, I don't, you know, it's typically an auto drop of the Fishawhack onto Tristana, but you know the opponent's not going to have any blockers next turn. I think I'm going to put it on our Grumble Slug. It's our next best unit. Maybe not. It's kind of like, I don't want the Fishawhack being stuck out here somewhere. Maybe we just put it on the Bandle City Mayor. If opponent comes at us with, say, a Swain... Oh, no. Oh, no. I forgot about him getting the tentacle back. Oh, that was dumb. That was dumb. I was just like, I had... Here's what happened. I had it in my head. Like, I thought so much about putting the silence onto the wandering thing. Whatever this is, I thought so much about putting the silence onto the Watchful Idol that I was like, yeah, he's not going to have a tentacle next turn. And then I went on to explain why why that may not be prudent to can block. And then we killed the tentacle, and I still had in my head like the silence on that guy play. So I thought that we were just easily going into this next turn with no blockers. And then I immediately said, oh, fuck. This Tristana's not doing any damage, huh? All right. Opponent said it was too much, though. We're getting kind of close to the hour mark. We're at the 47-minute mark. Let's get one more game in. We'll call it a day. Are y'all's games taking longer? I don't know what the deal is, man. We got 8 games in episode 420. But we're back to being slow. And that was even with that game where the opponent didn't do anything. And so I don't know what to think. All right, though. Up against Gnar Nidalee. This is another spot. I'm not entirely certain if we want to hang on to the pie tosses. I'm trying to think of what the Transformer style deck's going to have that the pie toss would actually kill. I don't think that there's too much. Kind of a crappy start. All right, Grumble Slug makes it better. Not having 1-drops isn't too surprising, right? We only play Teemo, but not having 2-drops is kind of painful. There's the target. It's Conchologist.
What wondrous
Got it.
discoveries await below?
So do we even want to drop the Mayor this turn? I don't... He might be safe. It's like where I was kind of going with this is I don't want to take a 1-cost play. That just doesn't strike me as being very good here. The Tenor of Terror is fine.
This requires my largest official hat.
But it's like if we're gonna play the Bandle City Mayor and then we're not going to be... then we're not going to be using the mana ability, would we rather just play the Vanguard Sergeant since it's more likely to be able to attack here? Alright, we're going to put in the Combat Cook. He's our biggest unit in this space. Probably want the Sandsworn Amulet. It's a little dangerous for him in terms of getting a follow-up block, like a follow-up shot, right? He's going to get this Pokey Stick in hand. But we do have the kind of form-up protection in here. He had a prowl. I've got a combat trick as well, my dude. So looking good. And then as we roll into our next attack token, we'll want to make sure we have 2 mana banked up for the champion's strength. We certainly want to be getting it onto the board. Drop in the sergeant. Why not? Not a super strong one. We're going to be able to fill out our board either way. The kind of downside with Teemo is he does die to this pokey stick that opponent has in hand. But we are going to have that potential for a scout attack next turn. I'm just going to ensure that we have the 6 units on board, and having these Owlcats get you really close to being in that space.
Some encouraging words.
The shadows and the brush comes in. All terrain trooper, sure thing. It's like I'm ultimately kind of worried about the negate disciple, and so kind of glad to see that ambush go away. Okay.
Oh, soups off.
We're gonna lose that on our unit. We got a little aggressive with our Bandle City Mayor there. Towering Hierophant, absolutely. Just take all of that damage, no worries. And now we know that we're gonna be safe to, well, we're gonna be safe to drop the champion's strength next turn, but he at least doesn't have the ambush unit on board. He can still have some interactive shenanigans, but the obvious one is out of the way. Alright, give me those stats. Not even a good champion strength. That's a bit unfortunate. We need to silence and suppress the Paraphant so that it's not big enough to take down the Tenor of Terra. Opponent says it's still too much. Alright, GG. Not a bad set of games. We can pull this up and talk about it a little bit more. And so, yeah, for the most part, with all of the aspects of this deck, I've been pretty happy with it, right? I think we hit a lot of the notes that we're looking for in terms of matchup and gameplay with this thing. But again, the big spot that I'm really not sold on in terms of, well, I'm sold on in terms of being in the deck, but just not in terms of the numbers, is this space of removal spells. And like, I think I'm pretty happy with the 3 copies of Form Up. It's such a nice play when your early game units kind of suck, and it gives you that spot to where you can say play a Grumble Slug on turn 2 and then still have 2 mana banked up, and then on turn 3 you can start adding in either a Grandfather Fay into a Owlcat, or you can add a Bandle City Mayor, and then you know that you're still good in terms of being able to kind of protect them with the Form Up, and then you can kind of pick and choose how your destiny is going to go as to whether or not you're going to be aggressive with your attackers, which the Form Up is fantastic with, or if you're going to be more defensive and build up to a champion strength or a Vanguard Sergeant. And so it's like, I like the Form Ups, but it's like, as I kind of mentioned, our idea and strategy going into this best of 3 event is I'm not going to ban out any of the Siren Song decks, right? We're looking to keep all of those up. Our intended ban in this event is going to be, again, either like Obnoxious Control deck. You always run into it like once or twice to where somebody's like, herder, I'm playing a Nivea today, you know? And it's like, it's nice to be able to have the ban onto it. But then more realistically, the thing that we're going to be banning the majority of the day is the Gen Bandle City deck that has the Rite of Negation Disciples in it. And so with that idea in mind, we're going to be playing against like the Reaver's Row decks over and over and over again. We're going to play against the Evelynn decks over and over and over again. And so I really want the silences. And so it's like as we were playing against the Evelynn decks and we just didn't draw any silences, I was feeling like kind of bad, like I really wanted a third silence in the deck. But you, on the flip side, run into the spots to where it's just not relevant in a match. And so I think what I'm ultimately going to do is probably cut out either one of the Scrutinizing Sergeants or one of the Combat Cooks, and then fit in a Purify, because Purify kind of doubles up as a combat trick as well. You might be able to take a quick attack off of a unit and win a block, or you might be able to, if your opponent plays a combat trick, you can take the combat trick off with the Silence. Like, it has a few more options outside of the Silence and Suppress. And I think I might try and fit in one copy of it. But it's like, as much as I didn't really want these pie tosses, I do concede that we do kind of need the pie tosses. I'm not certain, though, if it's better than Group Shot or if I would like to run it up to 3. And so I'll come up with something. I have a couple more days of preparation before the Runeterra Open gets here, but that's where my kind of like remaining thoughts and feelings were in these spaces. And we could also look to cut out a Teemo as well. But otherwise, like in general, the kind of idea and thought of this deck, I'm loving it. I think this is a fantastic place to be in. I don't know why people haven't picked up on adding Scrutinizing Sergeant in here for so long. Hitting a Scrutinizing Sergeant into Tristana was the tits. And so like I'm very excited about that aspect of being able to hit Tristana. You can hit Vanguard Sergeant as your kind of worst options in like Wandering Shepherd generating an equipment. That's still pretty good. Grandfather Fae generating a Hungry Owlcat that you can then Owlcat as a third unit onto the board. Very good as well. Even Grumble Slug just generating mana. Lots of fantastic options that come out of the Scrutinizing Sergeant. Very powerful, and I think it's going to be a very ample replacement to the Bandle Gunners. And so, good stuff, fun deck. I enjoyed that. I hope you did too, because that is going to do it for us today. And so, hope everyone enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way and had a good time watching. This is Busted Me. Thank you for being here.